Philip Stoten from My House to Yours. Welcome to EMS at Sea Level. I am joined by Anna-Katrina Shedletsky from Instrumental. Anna, thanks for talking to me again. We've spoken a couple of times in the past. I was particularly excited to talk to you today, and doing a little bit of prep, poking around on the website, I found the Meta case study, which kind of blew me away, really. And I think it will many readers. And understanding how you can save 900 engineering weeks across seven programs annually, not just as a one-off, that's just phenomenal value. How does that happen?
Yeah. So we're really excited about that case study. The core areas where Meta gets value is they're using us in NPI, and they use Instrumental to help them proactively identify defects in their NPI process. So instead of finding things in DVT, find them in EVT or in proto builds. They use us to eliminate problems earlier, which means they're also eliminating downstream failure analysis time, extra building, DOEs, all sorts of things. And when you accumulate all of that value from essentially building higher quality products the first time, or maybe just the second time versus having to do a lot of iteration, has really led to a lot of savings for them. So 900 engineering weeks across 7 NPIs annually is what we were announced, and that relationship is really important to Instrumental, but also it's a good demonstration of what other customers see when they implement us in the NPI process. Which is new product introduction, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great example of that value analysis in the application of a process. I think what's also interesting when you think of NPI, it's not just about saving costs during the process. It's about getting stuff to market quicker, and that's a factor that they've talked about in there as well. And that's hugely important. What you can gain in terms of knock-on value from getting to market maybe 2, 3, 6 months earlier is phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah, the acceleration of an NPI process enables you to essentially release engineers earlier, get them onto the next program. And so the value of that is massive, because you could take like the full 15, 40, 400 engineers and put them on something that can add value to the organization. Particularly in highly competitive markets, it's very important to get to market quicker and get your product out faster. So there's a lot of benefit in that. In addition, even if you're not thinking about it as like, oh, we could get to market faster, you can get to market at much higher levels of product maturity. So as a mechanical engineer myself, who was a product design engineer responsible for building products at Apple, we didn't ship at the start of ramp at like 100% yields. That did not happen. There was a ramp process where we kind of had to like work our way through a lot of problems. And what we've seen with customers is that they ultimately can hit that ramp deadline at a much higher level of maturity, having really resolved a lot of the issues much earlier in the NPI process, which is where we really want to resolve those issues. Because then you can make design changes versus kind of manage the problem changes, process changes, things that, a CM, you rely on your manufacturing partner to try to constantly maintain this very complex process. It's just better to just change the design so you don't even have to worry about it.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting, Anna, is we spoke at length previous times and much earlier to the formation of your business, and we talked about where the spark came from. And I'm glad you mentioned Apple, because it was your frustration, and this was a tool that you felt you really wanted. Do you feel that Meta used it in the way you would have used it if you'd had it available to you? Is it that really strong and really nice personally validation of what you thought was the requirement in the market in the first place?
Simply yes, and it brings great satisfaction to have brought something into the world that makes engineers able to do their best work and spend less time. The 900 hours that we're cutting out 900 engineering weeks that we're cutting out, this is not like high quality, wonderful engineering time. This is like often very tedious tasks and kind of like the drudgery part of the job. And so also you could think about that changing the ratio for an engineer about how much time they spend doing value additive tasks like designing and implementing and using their engineering degrees versus times that they spend communicating and like analyzing data and like physically ripping things apart and the time that
Yeah.
that takes. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and getting on planes to different time
some of
zones
that too, although
and
it's
having
always
to deal with
great to
that.
spend time on the line and with your manufacturing partner. But some of it, yes, could be travel.
Yeah.
For some of our
Yeah.
customers, that's a more important factor. Although, nothing can really replace being on the line. So
Yeah,
we
you've got to
never,
be there.
we're never really advocating that our customers should not travel
Should
to their
not go
factory
see what's
lines.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I wanted to touch on the relationship with the EMS company, the contract manufacturer as well, because there are kind of three people in this relationship.
absolutely.
And one of them's the customer, one of them's the supplier, and one of them's the EMS company that has this stuff installed. I assume gets not incidental, but some value from having it there in terms of, maybe increasing yield, maybe reducing rework, those kind of things. Tell me a bit about the relationship with the EMS companies and how they initially see the product when it's installed and how they embrace it as they start to see value from it.
Yeah, so I think a lot of times when manufacturing partners look at instrumental, or when they're generally our customer is the brand side that's working with the manufacturer. Um, and when they see instrumental, they think that we're just some sort of fancy AOI, automated optical inspection. We're just going to do real
Mm.
time pass fail judgment. And they have this kind of take on it. And they might even say, like, look, I also have some sort of,
Yeah,
computer vision cheap
yeah,
camera thing I can put on your line. If that's what you want, Mr. Customer, I can do that too.
yeah,
And so I think sometimes there's a little bit like, why are you spending money on this thing? I can do,
yeah,
I can do that. And some of it they can do. But instrumental is so much more. Like the part of what goes in the factory is just like the tip of the spear of
yeah,
aggregating data from images, also functional test data, and leveraging AI to find connections and insights and identify defects and identify root causes, accelerate that engineering process. And so it's a lot more than just pass fail.
yeah.
Do I missing screws or not on the line? And so I think sometimes that's how the first reaction.
The first
And then
perception.
what we find is that it is a three body problem. And we
Mm.
find that the manufacturing partners that we're working with actually across our customer base are generally 25 to 30% of our usage actually is by the manufacturing partners of our paying
Mm.
customer.
Yeah,
And the reason there is because they're getting value too. And the type of value that they get is similar. Like if those issues are being resolved, they're doing less FA.
mm.
They're like doing less DOEs. The whole NPI process is getting shortened. And generally that's a good thing for most
Yeah.
manufacturers. Also, the cost of NPIs are generally less, and they can get to production faster at higher levels of quality. So like they're starting at better yields and margins right out the gate. And
Yeah.
so generally manufacturing partners are actually pretty positive on instrumental most of the
Mm.
time. And we've even shown up in some of their pitch decks that they pitch to their customers that they're instrumental
Okay.
ready or instrumental enabled.
Okay. So they become a bit of an advocate or an ambassador if they're,
Yeah, if they're
if through
particularly
their
enamored.
customer they're a
Yeah.
power user. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. And it's interesting what you say about using the AI and going back to what you said previously about it not being the engineer's most fun jobs. AI's figuring out where AI belongs in manufacturing is a really interesting discussion, which we've been having for a couple of years and we'll be having for some substantial time going forward. But I think it's really important. And the idea of automation was always dangerous, dirty, and dreary. So fulfilling those, and if you can take away the drudgery, that's important. I wanted to explore AI not just in how it's being used in manufacturing, but how it's being manufactured.
Yeah.
Because it is a huge volume market. When you look at servers generally, that's a huge market for the EMS industry, and companies are gearing up. So the idea of using AI to make AI, it's like robots building robots. It's kind of a fascinating situation. Talk to me about that, and talk to me about how you see it as someone that's really embraced AI and is applying it successfully in a manufacturing ecosystem.
Yeah, so while Meta is a consumer electronics customer, we also have seen a massive amount of growth in the data center networking. We call rackables is kind of our shorthand. Anything you put in a
Mm.
rack in a data center um, are being like it's a huge growth market. And
Yeah.
what we've seen is given that there's also a push to build a lot of that stuff in the US or in America, including
Mm.
Mexico and other
Yeah.
places in the Americas. And that has driven a little bit of a change from where some of these companies have maybe had multi-country opportunities. Now they're really focused in these singular geos and bringing up massive scale. And while certainly we've been like the industry has been building servers for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of that, but
Yeah.
it's very interesting because I think it's one of the times that they're under a lot of pressure, lead time pressure. Every unit they can make sells like as soon as they can
Yeah.
make it.
Yeah.
And so improving things like their shadow factory, their bone piles, their yield, first pass yield, still like downstream quality still really matters because you know one problematic unit can like take out a whole thing.
Mm.
And so I think there's like a lot more pressure in this market than there has been in prior years and
Yeah.
decades. And there's still like really interesting and valuable problems to solve there. And I think those problems are well suited to AI technologies.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the AI building the AI. So what kinds of AI technologies, you might ask?
Mm.
Specifically, there's the kind of automation elements where you can use AI to do automation activities, visual inspection, these types of things. But there's also insight and alignment and correlation between different types of these products are very complex. And so between
Mm.
different types of data sources that you might have, can you find insights that actually enable you to run a more efficient process, run a more
Yeah.
efficient factory, design a better product, ultimately do those MPIs faster, switching, being able to switch between different SKUs or like nearly custom built. So
Yeah.
there's a you are AI is very good for this because oftentimes you don't have 100 samples to be able to
Mm.
like get up to train a conventional model or conventional system. You need few shot learning and machine learning and deep learning technologies can be particularly useful for
Yeah.
lot sizes of 20 or 50 versus
Yeah.
you're building a million a day somewhere in a
Yeah.
phone factory is very different.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very different environment. Just to go back to what you were saying earlier, you mentioned shadow factory. What do you mean by shadow factory?
Yeah, the shadow factory is the part of your factory that you generally can't see. It includes rework, retest, and your bone pile. It's
Yeah.
this circulating part of your factory where units are. You might have some visibility. It depends on your relationship with the factory and your manufacturing partner. If it's yours, if you're plugged into their MES,
Yeah.
we find that many customers in the networking and data center space often don't have visibility into how many
Yeah.
times products are circulating around their lines.
Yeah.
And so they've found units that have gone through test 50 times, or
Wow.
where this unit has been circulating for a year, or parts on it have actually, parts expire, right? So, like
Yeah.
that, even parts have expired before they got it out of the bone pile. We've
Yeah.
also learned a lot of the testing. Like functional tests, end of line tests in this market is often very expensive and very lengthy. And so every time you have to run a unit through an 8 hour, 12 hour, however
Yeah.
long test, this is a significant impact to your overall efficiency in the factory. And so
Yeah.
if you can reduce the amount of times those units are circulating, you now have suddenly more capacity in test than
Yeah.
you previously had. And so we have customers that are really seeing the benefits of essentially clamping down on those shadow factory elements by just
Yeah.
reducing the creation of the bone pile in the first place, or at least
Yeah.
having awareness of how the bone pile is changing over time. And that's
Yeah.
an area where we help our customers get visibility and also eliminate over time the creation of units that go into that bone pile, giving them
Yeah.
capacity
Absolutely.
for free.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's hugely valuable. But yeah, I see what you mean by shadow factory because it's basically product dropping off the line, disappearing, and for some reason reappearing at a later date or
Yeah.
appearing elsewhere on the line even.
And
So
certainly, like the manufacturing partner, you're aware that there's a bone pile. You might be aware
mm,
how big it is, but often these bone piles are like millions of dollars of
yeah,
inventory.
yeah,
We have customers who like mine their bone piles to hit their quarterly numbers. Like
yeah,
it feels like it's not a great it's not a great situation. If we could like
No.
ultimately reduce the amount of units that are circulating in that shadow factory, the factory that you see can be much more efficient to begin with.
Yeah, and we're coming off the back of 2 years where cash in inventory has been a major problem for the manufacturing industry. So anything that takes stuff out of inventory or work in progress and turns it into cash flow is hugely valuable at the
Yeah.
moment. People have seen that. I just wanted to switch to kind of the mega trends around AI. When you look at AI throughout manufacturing, we're seeing some really interesting applications in terms of supply chain and in terms of different areas. And you mentioned also the reshoring trend, and that is driving a requirement for automation because as you move stuff back to the US, there are talent issues that we've got to deal with. So when you look at AI and automation, do you see it as something that can mitigate that talent shortage? And where do you see it being most valuable? How do you choose where to apply AI and where not to? I think that's the really important thing because everybody's thinking, oh yeah, AI is just going to do everything. Well, it's not, is it? But it's for
I
me,
mean,
I think of it
we
as
can
a
all
great
imagine the
co-pilot.
pixie
Yeah.
dust, right?
Yeah.
um, but I mean, my advice would be to focus on solving business problems.
Hmm.
It's like it's standard business stuff. Like it just because
Yeah.
there's a new technology doesn't mean we, go about it. We throw out everything we know from the past
Yeah.
decade. So how can you move your metrics that matter for
Yeah.
different businesses? It may be yield, it may be throughput, it may be lead time, whatever that core metric is that's
Yeah.
really gating and throttling your P&L, your delivery to the business.
Yeah.
And it would be looking for solutions to those problems. So I think having like really clear problem statements and maybe being more open-minded about what solutions could look like
Hmm.
for that problem statement would be the biggest piece of advice. I
Yeah.
think it's very easy to get caught up in the like AI excitement, but I know that manufacturing people, we're pretty pragmatic. Like we
Hmm.
probably we rode the like industry 4.0 predicts GE
Yeah.
wave and saw that kind of crash and burn. So I think we're generally skeptical slash pragmatic, looking for real solutions. And so I would look for things where it's like very clearly going to deliver value in some known period of time.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say as a recommendation is to put it where it hurts. Like, don't solve a
Yeah.
problem in the corner that no one cares about. Solve a problem that's like bleeding now.
Yeah.
This is where you'll be able to see the biggest impact and really be able to evaluate a technology. That could feel very scary because, like,
Yeah. It
this is
does.
already like broken and on fire.
Yeah.
Why would we like add more things that could change stuff? I think there's ways, AI specifically, like you're generally talking digital data. And so if you're just looking at digital data, you might not be changing the line very much, but still be
Hmm.
able to actually see if you could get value out of these different tools. I think being a little more open-minded about what solutions could look like is great too, because maybe you have in your mind, you're going to have this magical measurement microwave, you put parts in and it's just going to like ding done.
Yeah.
But like maybe the solution looks a little different than that, but it can still
Yeah.
actually meet the KPI you're trying to push. So that would be some
Yeah.
of the advice I would have. Certainly for the talent gap, and it's not even just like a talent like know-how gap, it's like literally just people gap
Hmm.
often. We see that in our customers. There are some tasks that like automation is the way to go to try to
Hmm.
reduce and put, not just to reduce headcount, but put that headcount on more value additive activities,
Yeah.
open up an extra line so you can have like a whole nother line of output. And so I think identifying opportunities for that are critical. And I think
Yeah.
AI augmentation can help you actually potentially
With
reduce
automation.
duplicate or triplicate. We find in the US specifically in like the mission critical manufacturing factories and environments that there are a lot of steps that are done in duplicate and triplicate to just double
Hmm.
check that everything is good, trying to get a 6 sigma on an 80% effective kind of
Yeah.
operation.
Process. Yeah.
And that's an area where like maybe being able to reduce your triplicate down to singleton supported by AI might be another
Yeah.
opportunity to look at. So those would be some of
Yeah.
the things, or other
Yeah.
places where you have like a lot of drudgery, or where you might be
Yeah.
using robotic process automation today. Are there places where you can go beyond robotic automation to
Hmm.
actually add intelligence? So you don't have people whose entire job it is to like compile reports from Excel. Like if you have
Yeah.
people doing that, let's find more value additive things for those
Yeah.
individuals. I think AI tools combined with RPA can really provide this kind of value to these manufacturers who are trying to
Yeah.
make it work in a much higher labor cost and lower labor availability market.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And I mentioned to you earlier that I'd visited a lot of EMSs, particularly in the US recently. And several of them have said to me, thanks to automation over the last 5 years, they've doubled revenue with the same headcount. And it is all about not reducing headcount. It's about leveraging that headcount. And as they said to me, they've got more sustainable, more interesting, better paid jobs within the company as a result of that. So, it's it's a pretty interesting kind of win-win situation. And I think it is, again, it's just not letting the excitement of AI get in the way of the reality. It's in manufacturing, it's always evolution. It's almost never revolution. People talk
Yeah.
about industrial revolutions, and I was thinking when, even at the start of the Industry 4.0 discussion, I'm thinking this is just like an umbrella over a load of things we've been doing for a long time. We've been
Yes.
looking for operational efficiency and manufacturing excellence, and had systems and processes and softwares and such forth to do that. So it's a progression in that way. Last thing before we wrap up is Instrumental's not really a startup anymore. You've been going some time. I just wondered where you felt you were on the Instrumental journey, whether you see yourself as kind of an established player in the market, or whether you still feel like that startup that's kind of a bit more ninja in its approach than perhaps larger companies, and how the business has changed in that period.
Yeah, so it's actually interesting you asked this question because today is our ninth birthday, like literally today as a
Wow.
company.
Happy
Um,
birthday.
I guess. Um, yeah, it's great. It's been an amazing journey. And really we view success as ultimately changing how our
Mm,
customers can build and the types of products they can build. They can build better products. That's why we exist. That's our mission. And so, since this is a very mission driven company, I don't anticipate us ever like resting on our laurels and saying
no.
we've arrived. So, startup, upstart, whatever you want to call it, we're out there still fighting that good fight for our customers and the overall space. Like the interesting thing about having started the company 9 years ago is how the market has changed
Yeah.
and actually seen those changes in the market, adapting to those changes, but also that the problem that we solve, the hole in the market, which is like, how do you wrap your arms around all the unit data, like the
Mm,
functional test, that digital thread, the
yeah.
traceability, those buzzwords, the unit data, not just the product data, the unit data. How do you wrap your arms around it and really extract all the possible juice and IP that you can out of that? That is still not solved by anybody else. Like
No.
it's still open greenfield space that
Yeah.
Instrumental operates in, and we've value our partners and like working with larger established corporations to essentially work with them and their customers.
Mm,
And so there's been a lot of really great satisfying moments along
yeah.
this journey, and we're really excited about the work that we're doing now
Yeah.
and the work that's to come and the technology that we continue to build and put out on a every quarter basis,
Yeah.
pump out ever more cutting edge technology for this market. We've been building AI for manufacturing for 9 years.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
wasn't like we didn't call it AI back then. We hid
No.
it because we didn't want people to know and think it was
Yeah.
snake oil.
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
it.
so from that perspective, the technology's battle tested. Like you
Yeah.
don't get to 900 engineering weeks annually saved at a company like Meta if you aren't delivering real value year
Well,
after
yeah.
year after year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
So
real
really,
value, that and the
yeah.
acceleration. Congratulations on the success with Meta, but more importantly, congratulations on the 9 years. Go eat some cake, have some fun. Make sure you celebrate because I've got 3 kids. Every year you think, yes, we've kept them alive another year. It's success.
New
So
high score. New
just
high
that is
score.
worth celebrating. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That makes
Absolutely. So
sense.
keep doing what you're doing. Keep talking to us. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll chat again soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phil.